Every time there's a controversial event in the news, especially one that dominates headlines for days or weeks, I notice the same questions rising up among Christians. People start asking, what should I do? How should I respond? Do I need to say something? Should I post on social media? Or would it be wiser to step away from it altogether and live in a hut? Pastors especially wrestle with this. If I don't say anything, will this show I don't care? If I do, will I be misunderstood? What if I share my opinion and only 70% of my congregation agrees with me while the other 30% doesn't? In this video, I'll weigh the pros and cons of speaking up, how to handle people who post strong views that differ from yours, and some tips for posting as well. My view on sharing about controversial topics has evolved. I've gone through times when I was very hesitant and times when I felt like I had to share something. During the racial tensions that followed the murder of George Floyd, I shared some of my views on race. When Donald Trump rose to power in 2016, I shared some views on politics, and during the COVID pandemic, I shared some of my views on government. On my podcast, I've covered all kinds of controversial issues, such as the role of women in pastoral ministry, same-sex marriage, and the role Christians should play in social justice. I've listened to and featured voices I agree with, and those that I don't. Part of the reason I've done this is the season of life that I'm in. I'm not a pastor in charge of shepherding a congregation in a geographically confined area. I'm an everyday person trying to help others in many different locations think more like Jesus by showing how their faith touches real-world events. Some of these posts that I've made have come with a cost, and I've received a few labels like you're too conservative or too liberal. And one thing is certain, posting about controversial topics online has some clear potential downsides. No matter what you do, there's going to be someone who hates what you have to say, and if someone differs from you politically, chances are they will question your motives. So when it comes to hot button issues, it's hard to tackle any challenge and not lose half your audience. Sharing can be great, but before you get ready to hit post, here are a few things to consider. First, start by recognizing that everyone's starting point is different. If you live in rural America, for example, your daily experience is fundamentally different from that of someone living in a dense urban population center. Your relationship to safety is different. Your exposure to crime is different. Your expectations of political leaders are different. When I lived in Toronto, Canada, I understood why many of the people voted Liberal, because people were packed in close proximity to each other, and many of the programs that Liberal leaders in Canada supported were more geared towards this constituency, cracking down on greedy high-rise owners who price gouged residents. And when I moved to Idaho, the inverse was true. Here, people largely want individual freedom. There's generally elbow room right in between houses, and the common theme is just get government out of my life. Second, here's another challenge though. Culture is more view-shaping than would like to admit. Many of us like to believe we've arrived at our views purely through logic or careful thought. Yeah, that's me, right? But the truth is that our family background, our political history, and social environment all leave a mark. Maybe you grew up in a Democrat or Republican household. Were politics openly discussed or mostly avoided? Did you have a Christian flag that hung beneath the American one at your church? All of these experiences quietly form the lens through which you interpret events, often in ways you don't consciously notice. Take the horrific reality of school shootings, for example. No one I know wants these to continue, but the approach to finding a resolution is just very different. My quote-unquote liberal Christian friends, I'm using air quotes on purpose here, will say things like, Americans just have way too many guns. We need to get rid of guns, especially AR-15s, and this will make everyone safer. My conservative friends, air quotes again, will say things like, how on earth are you going to get rid of 400 million guns in America? That's a pipe dream. So a better approach is to arm teachers and make schools more like a bank. In terms of security. A third thing, though, to note is when addressing controversial issues, we need to be honest about the role media plays in shaping our biases. Media systems are not neutral. You know this. And they're rarely rewarded for patience or nuance. They are incentivized to attention, outrage, and speed. I've watched this play out again and again when tragedy strikes. I mean, you just scan any major news outlet website today and just look at the way headlines are phrased. Trump sparks fear in the hearts of Americans. Crazy communist Mamdani threatens the security of all New Yorkers, right? These websites are designed to make you think the world is a terrible place and to leave you stuck in fear. I'll give you another example. I challenge you to turn on World News Tonight with David Muir. You can do this on YouTube. Sometimes I do this with Janan, and we just get a good laugh because it's so crazy. Watch the first 60 seconds of this show, and it always follows the same pattern. It'll start with this. Tonight, devastating hurricane winds pummel the southeast. A newborn kitten in Montana was thrown to the wolves, and global unrest has America on the verge of World War III. Like, those are the first three things he'll talk about. Then after like literally 8 or 9 horrible events in a row, he'll throw in this one nice one that says, finally, two adopted kids who spent years apart finally meet for the first time. This cycle is so outrageous to me and so out of harmony with how most people live. But if that's the type of media that you thrive on, that you feed on, right wing or left wing, you're going to think everyone in the world is crazy, or at least half the population is crazy. Now, I need to make an important point. When addressing controversial issues, it's impossible to be consistent. The problem with speaking up on one issue is that you naturally exclude others. You might talk about Israel and Palestine, but not give one thought to those massacred in Nigeria or Iran. Maybe you'll criticize one political party, but never another. We've all got blind spots, and it's awfully easy to cherry pick those topics that affect us in our context. There can be great value in speaking truth to power when most of the people in your feed will view you as heroic for your decision. Let's just take a recent example, a painful one. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, the response on Sunday from pastors showed this breakdown. And I'm going to generalize here, right? Not all pastors fit in this category, but those largely in conservative districts equated Kirk with being a martyr. Those in mixed districts spoke against violence, but acknowledged that Kirk had made some poor statements. And then those in more liberal, often inner city areas, steer clear of this assassination talk whatsoever and denounced any comparison of Kirk to like MLK, for example. Here's another example. Take President Trump's recent image that was a racist depiction of Michelle and Barack Obama as apes. And while several voices across the aisle spoke up, many didn't. In fact, I saw very few conservative voices who have been vocal about Democratic concerns in the past speak up on this issue. And if they did, they said things like, okay, well, this is unfortunate, but, and then they went on to list all the ways that Democrats had done the exact same thing. My point isn't to be overly critical, because I've fallen into this trap as well. I've said things, I've written things that I wish I could probably take back now in retrospect. My point, though, is to say that we're all prone to bias. And we're prone to posting bold messages of truth to power when we know that those in our audience will think more highly of us for doing so. And this raises an important point I've brought up several times in daily devotionals on themondaychristian.com. After interviewing hundreds of authors via podcasting and one-on-one interviews through my job, I've discovered that every person has their cause and set of issues they believe are very important. Maybe it's social justice, the sanctity of marriage, the rights of the unborn, and the authority of Scripture. All of these things are very important and need to be emphasized. The problem, though, is when someone specializes in one issue and make it the lens through which they see every other issue. When it comes to consuming or posting on controversial topics on social media, it's imperative to understand two words: incentives and algorithms. Social media algorithms are built to maximize attention, and anger is one of the fastest ways to keep you engaged. When you interact with content that confirms your existing views, the algorithm feeds you more of it, creating a loop where your outrage is rewarded and opposing perspectives disappear. This is why, before you post something, question the incentive structure. Ask, what do I have to gain by posting? Is it more acclaim or for people to think better of you? If that's the case, you might want to reconsider. Before reposting what someone else shares, ask, why did they post this? Is it because it's something they truly believe, or are they being incentivized to do so? Don't let your life be controlled by faulty incentive structures and algorithmic wormholes that create a confirmation bias. And never, I can't stress this enough, never lose a friend because an algorithm or incentive structure pressured you into manufactured outrage. Proactively push against this trend. How do you do this? Here are a few tips. First, define your why. Why do you want to post? What good will it do? What's your end objective? Is it just to get something off your chest, or is it to compel others to meaningful change? Second, learn as many differing perspectives as possible. A couple of years ago, when I made some posts on race and same-sex marriage, I read about 30 books by authors who had very different perspectives on both topics. This helped me realize that just changing one or two words often meant the difference between someone hearing my argument or someone shutting me out. I'll give you an example. Some black authors I've worked with would say it's impossible for a black person to be racist. The first time I heard that, I thought, my goodness, you're insane. What a horribly racist thing to say. Then I studied what they meant, and to them, race was tied to power. And so they weren't saying a black person couldn't be prejudiced and sinful. It was a bit of semantics. And while I disagree with their conclusions, I realized we were closer in belief than I originally thought. Here's another example. Several years ago, I interviewed Gregory Cools, author of Single Gay Christian. When I did, I received some pushback from people who just read the title of the book or saw the title of the podcast and said, hey, so are you saying the Bible supports gay marriage? But again, it was largely semantics. Gregory felt the term same-sex attracted, SSA, wasn't helpful and listed a number of reasons in his book why. When Gregory used the term gay Christian, he was speaking of someone who was attracted to the same sex but chose to live as a single celibate adult with a high devotion to Jesus. Again, I disagree with his wording, but once I understood what he meant, we had a wonderful conversation. Here's the third thing though, don't couch your beliefs. I see this often. Sometimes you say something and you're like, everyone's mad at me, so then you pull back. No, state what you believe boldly, but with love. Be clear about what you believe and articulate that, but pay close attention to this fourth point. Be open to change. If you position what you've written or videoed as the authoritative word on the topic and include a comment like, this is not up for discussion and I will be deleting all comments that dissent from my opinion, that's a little bit problematic. Instead, a better approach is to say, okay, this is my current understanding, but I welcome you to change my perspective. Again, you approach it with humility. Fifth, shift to real-world action. If a friend calls you out, ask to speak to them on the phone. If someone in your community or church shares, meet them for lunch. Let the online world be a gateway into the real world. Ideally, your online community should be a small fraction of the real-life actions that you have. Ask yourself, what am I doing locally to make a difference? If you're always posting about immigration, what's the one thing you have done in the real world to help an immigrant? If you're always posting about how hateful one politician is, what are you doing to spread love in your community? This past week, I reached out to social media and asked some of my friends to weigh in on the topic of posting on controversial subjects. Tim said that before he posts, he always thinks, which of my customers am I willing to alienate here? That's a pretty good one, especially if you're a small business owner. Christiana, she said, should rather talk face-to-face, and Doug adds that he doesn't post on controversial subjects and he just avoids them altogether. Richard added that he weighs the time involved with addressing multiple comments. That's a big one. Candace says she doesn't post if she's not informed on the topic. Yeah, I wish more people were like you, Candace. Alex said he tries to stay in his wheelhouse, and I know Alex a little bit through watching his stuff online, and he does a good job at that. Stuart is all for posting because it says in 1 Peter 1:15 about giving a reason for the hope that's in you. My friend David, I reached out to him and I said, hey, what do you think of this, what I'm sharing here? And he reminded me that personality plays a role. And one group tends to thrive on controversy, right? We all have friends like that. Well, others want to be like, hey, I'm the balanced person. I've fallen into this trap a lot myself. Like, hey, you guys are this way, but I'm the balanced one, right? He added that the urge to post quickly probably isn't from God. And I think he's probably accurate on that one. One point I especially like came from Sherilyn, and she said, I won't engage in controversial topics unless I'm healthy emotionally. That's great advice. The key to a strong emotional foundation, I think, is to start with your identity in Christ and remember, as Paul notes in Ephesians 1:4-5, that God chose us in him before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless in love before him. He predestined us to be adopted as sons through Jesus Christ for himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. That's our true calling, not to be influencers, not to insert our opinions on others, but to be holy, which is Christlikeness, to be loving, which means seeking the highest good of others, and to live like an adopted child, which means our identity is secure and we don't need to search for it in causes or making others think well of us. The algorithms and incentive structures of this world will seek to distract your mind, try to make you harbor bitterness in your heart and make you feel like Jesus isn't in control, but these are all lies. So push back on them and approach conversations online with the heart of a Philippians 2 servant. Just as Jesus condescended to earth, to live among broken and fallen people like you and I, go to where people are at and learn their perspective. Be bold in what you believe, but be open to change. Be truthful, but kind. And above all, don't lose sight of your primary identity. You are an adopted child of God, so live like that and keep putting your Sunday belief into Monday action.